Hey, Hub Crew, great to be with you today. I'm hanging out today with Carl Mutzelburg, my good friend. How you feeling today over there in Queensland, Carl?
It's always good in Queensland, John. You know that. Always warmer. We win the AFL grand final. I don't really know why you'd live anywhere else, to be honest. So,
Yeah,
very
Brisbane
good.
Lions pulled it off last weekend. Not that anyone
Of
overseas
course.
understands what we're talking about, but great,
That's right.
great
Sorry.
game.
Yes.
No, that's fine. AFL football. Google that. AFL in Australia. Google that. Watch some highlights. You'll be staggered by what you see. Now, if you're watching live with us, jump into the comments. Tell us where you are today. Tell us where you're hanging out, who you're hanging out with, and as we go along, feel free to drop any questions into the comments. We'll kind of cover them a bit later because we want to kind of get rolling with the masterclass that we've got with Carl Mutzelburg. Now, Carl, you have just this year finished up pastoring after how many years were you pastoring in the church there in
Well, I was
Ipswich?
14 as lead pastor, and then you can probably say another 10 in different, youth pastor, executive pastor roles. So 24 years. Yeah,
Wow. So that's a quarter of a century of your life
that's
pastoring
right.
in different roles within the church. Can you walk us through a bit of your decision-making process? Because we're talking about navigating the path out of pastoral ministry,
Mm,
which all pastors do at one stage or another through different
mm,
reasons and different scenarios. What were the key factors that influenced your decision that said, after 24 years, I'm going
mm,
to finish up after 14 years as a lead pastor? I'm finishing up.
mm,
I'm going to get out of the pastoral life and go into something
mm.
else in my life. What were the key factors in your decision making process?
I do want to say first up, it was a very, very difficult decision. I think for me too. Somebody that once I sign up to something, I don't want to let it go quickly. So I wouldn't say it was flippant at all. I would say though it was probably years in the making, John.
Hmm.
Years of just a niggle that perhaps there was something else different. More is a dangerous word, but that God had something else for me.
Hmm.
So it was a very long process, and I think God very gradually sort of took me to that place.
Hmm.
Um, I like to say that it wasn't sort of one thing, and this, to be honest, wasn't very easy for my church to understand. I don't think because sometimes it's easier if you've just I mean, I'm not diminishing it, but if you've had burnout or something, well,
Yeah.
that's why,
Right.
if you've
Yeah.
had some sort of major conflict, that's the reason. If I'd, had some sort of failure, okay. But it just wasn't a thing. It was many bottles on the shelf, is the way I
Hmm.
often talked about it. And every bottle had something in it. I had just been through quite a series of a difficult situation with my movement that happened about a year in the preceding year. There were plenty of things, but these things happen in pastoral life.
Hmm.
The church was in a really good place; it was healthy, so it was hard to nail what it was. I think on the negative, if you want to put it like that, it was a very increasing sense of dis unease, maybe is the way to put
Right.
it, in
Yeah.
in the role that I was in. And we all have our 2 o'clock in the mornings, but I had maybe a few too many of them.
Right.
And I remember, and then there were sort of tiny miraculous moments in there. I remember getting up one time at 2 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, and I prayed, and you do the things you do. But I looked at job ads. Now, I'm sure we've all done that, but this one time, never gone to this one site. I went to this site. This political role popped up, and it was like something lit up in me
Hmm.
that created a catalyst for very serious discussion with Jess, and that was probably the beginning of getting serious. Maybe that was more than a year ago now, and then that meant talking to good people. You were one of them. My pastoral supervisor was also somebody that was helpful, external to the process. Family, people close to you, so you went through that journey. And I'll be honest, some people said yes, and some people said no. Don't
Wow.
do that. That
Yeah.
would be crazy. So
Hmm.
it was not an easy process to walk through. But for us, it was just constantly, God, what are you saying? And when we really went to discernment, we found the very first day, I could tell you that whole story, I won't, but we got this scripture that, like Abraham, well, not like, it was Abraham that was called into an unknown land.
Mm.
And again, that was opened up again and again and again over the next couple of months.
Wow.
So it was miraculous. It was people. It was God speaking. It was prayer, all to this final point of a quite painful moment of saying, we think this is actually what is happening, and we're gonna let go.
Wow.
So I don't know if that answers your question well enough. But,
how did you handle people that you respect, obviously, and you were seeking response from, who said no? What was that like, processing the no from people that you're reaching out to,
look,
amongst the yeses, and also amongst the fact the Lord's speaking to you out of Scripture, and you're sensing the time is right, but you got a couple of people that you love and respect is saying no. How did you handle that? What was that like?
well, I really respected that, and I think that's a part of a decision-making process. Probably something's wrong if every single, barring the obvious, if every single person is just yes, 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 then you've only got yes people that will, we definitely had people challenge us and make us think harder and longer, and maybe they made a difference to how we made the decision in the end. So, and I think I understand too, some people process different. We just had to have a peace about that. And all of them in the end were good, by the way. When we said, hey, we think it is a yes, they were like, we get it. That's okay.
Yeah, it's
so,
interesting.
I did.
Go on, sorry.
I did want to say, I really wanted to say at some point, I know what pastoring is like. I hope pastors are listening. The last thing I would want to do, though, is sort of also, like, I think 99 times out of 100, as you go through these times, probably the answer should be stay. That's going to be my honest feeling. And I'm so glad I didn't leave many times when I sort of just wanted to, don't make long-term decisions on short-term emotions. So I wouldn't want anybody here to sort of hear a flippant, hey, yes or no, it's up to you. I think pastoral ministry is the toughest job in the world, or one of, and incredibly important. So don't misunderstand anything I say to that.
Yeah. No, we're not building a platform for pastors to bail here. We're not doing that at all. Good. And I think it is interesting that the 20-year mark, because one of the questions pastors ask me in the consulting field is am I really the right person to lead this church now or into its next phase? And I always answer, yes, you are, unless Jesus says otherwise. So I think you need to put to bed pretty quickly that quitting sort of thing that gets on pastors. No, I'm staying. But maybe the Lord is speaking. And I think the 20-year mark around pastoring, 20 years either as the senior pastor of a church or as a solo pastor, or 20 years in ministry, I think those sort of times I'm finding pastors get to, in today's complex world, get to the 20-year mark and start to really weigh up, okay, I wonder if I've run the race I've meant to run and it's time to move into something else. And I think it's quite a healthy thing, to be honest with you, because not many pastors get to 20 years. It's a challenging vocation, as you've mentioned. So nothing wrong with kind of doing a 20-year stint and then going, okay, Lord, is there something else? And I think it's...
I'd take it just a touch further and say, I do wonder whether, this is where you got to be cautious and hear it through wisdom lens, but hanging on too long is actually dangerous for you and for your church. And I wonder if that's where burnout sometimes does come, moral failure comes, because pastors are sort of holding on maybe out of fear. There's all sorts of wrong reasons as well.
Totally agree. I think staying too long can be as bad or worse than leaving prematurely. So I think getting the season, the time right, is so critical. Look, I understand successions, transitions are emotionally complex. How has it affected you emotionally at that sort of heart of your soul? How have you found the journey, even just walking with the Lord? Because you walk differently with the Lord when you're not pastoring. It's been my experience anyway. It adjusts your walk because you're not carrying that burden of souls on you to the same degree. So, have you found the emotional side of the transition?
Yeah, look, there's definitely been days of complete quandary and wondering and pondering. Yeah, I think on this question, it's going to be different for all people depending on what's gone on for you. See, for me, it wasn't a burnout and it wasn't sort of some sort of devastation. So there wasn't a massive recovery needed, what. So
Mm.
we did a holiday. I think that was very clever with great friends, and I pretty much, I mean, a lot of people, I had pastors say to me, you then take 6 months off and don't do a thing. I think that would have been the wrong thing for me. I needed to jump into the next thing and sort of keep going. So,
Mm.
so I never found an emotional, I personally didn't go down into the dumps and all of that. I will say I'm not through this journey, by the way. I mean, we might get to that, but I'm still
Mm.
somewhere in the middle of working out what the
Mm.
future will be. And, that's very interesting. One of
Mm.
the things, though, I've really pushed into is this idea of liminal spaces. So that's the space in between spaces.
Mm.
And when you read scripture, you read a lot about that. The classic is Joseph, right? So he's meant to be this amazing guy that's going to save the world, or at least Israel.
Yep.
And what is it? All these years he goes to jail and he's falsely accused and he's sitting in dungeons, and that's a liminal. That's like, what are you doing, God? So it's actually done me good. And I know I'm only talking short time frames, but I think those times are important to go through as well. I've definitely done some soul searching in those places.
Mm.
Again, that would be a whole nother podcast as well. But
I like that
but
phrase, liminal space. I haven't heard that
yeah,
phrase. That phrase
liminal
doesn't ring a
space. It's
bell at
sort of,
all. It's interesting.
yeah, the
Pulpit.
space between spaces,
Wow.
and
Wow.
there's books on it. But again, Joseph, Moses, Jesus, when
Mm.
he goes for the temptation, there's so many examples of this sort of transitionary time where God actually does a lot of identity work in you. And I wouldn't say I've sort of reached, some sort of level, but I definitely felt that journey.
Wow. Yeah, I love that, Carl. And I think you're right. That liminal space is interesting. Does it have levels of fear and uncertainty for you, or is it an exciting space to be in? We'll just see what the Lord opens up for you. And I know you're dabbling in different things at the moment, but where does it kind of lean for you? More fear and uncertainty and security, or is it more exciting? Wow, we'll just see how this unfolds.
Well, I think in the early part for me, yeah, it's fear and uncertainty, and I think that's almost the point. You have to wrestle. What
Mm.
do I do with that fear and uncertainty? And you can have your scriptures and your promises, but you'll wake up the next day and you might still fear the fear and the
Mm.
uncertainty, and that's actually, I think God's got you there for a purpose. I had something of a breakthrough. I remember saying to Jess, my wife, about 6 weeks ago, maybe. So this is what I mean. I'm still doing this, but I said I really feel like I've come through something and I'll mention it maybe later, but the sovereignty of God and just learning to trust irrespective. If you look at Joseph, he eventually comes to a place where you can see that guy is trusting God and not trusting himself, and it's like
Mm.
this character transformation that happens in this journey that he's on. About 6 weeks ago, I'm very happy to share this.
Mm.
So I've gone and dabbled into politics, is sort of what
Mm.
I'm really going at. So the whole world has opened up for me now in politics. Now that journey's not finished. I'm actually running in our state election. So in a way, I don't feel at the moment like I'm pausing and not sure. I just feel like it's all future and hope and energy. But I
Mm.
feel like the breakthrough was 6 weeks ago when I didn't know what was going on. But I said, Jess, something's changed in my spirit. I feel
Mm.
I'm okay to sit and let God do whatever He's going to do.
Mm.
And that took me a few months to get there. And I don't know, some people might get there quicker, maybe some people longer,
Hmm.
but that was me. Yeah.
Feeling stuck as a church leader? Growing your church doesn't have to be overwhelming. The Hub gives you step-by-step roadmaps to grow a healthy church in just 20 minutes a day. Join the hundreds of church leaders who found their breakthrough by accessing my 4 decades of ministry experience, which delivers genuine results. Start your free 14-day trial today at growahealthychurch.com/hub. Was there anything that you did that shifted you into that space of, yep, okay, the Lord's got this? Was there anything that you enacted in a spiritual way, or was it just one of those moments where you wake up and go, I feel different. I'm just different.
No,
But
I no, I definitely. So I studied Joseph. I actually am writing a book at the moment,
oh,
and
cool.
I did a whole chapter on liminal spaces, on waiting. That
Mm,
did me good. I listened to
mm,
good, you know, Tim Keller is one of my favorites.
mm.
You know, listen to him on this subject. I bought books on it. So I think you have to pursue this one if you want to speed the journey up. I think you can do the journey, but if you want to speed it up, learn and ask people, and allow God to, and let truth. What do you know? The Bible speaks to us, and I really let Scripture sort of be my guide, and I tried to practice those truths, because you got to get them from here to here.
Yeah.
Is the key point. But
I
I
think
don't want to pretend that there hasn't been challenges. The
sure.
disconnect from my own church has been hard at times. People have been good, especially the friends that we've got there. But it has felt very strange getting up on Sunday morning, literally driving past our church. I still call it our church, to a church, 20 minutes away. And my kids still go to our old church. There has been pain in that journey, no doubt.
I really love this, Carl. I think this is great advice, because I know I'm working with 3 different pastors at the moment who are in
Yeah,
various stages of transitioning, succession, and doing more of that consulting these days. And I think this is great for pastors who are in the Hub listening to this, because I think it awakens you if you haven't yet handed over, if you haven't done the transition day yet. I think it'll awaken you to the fact that the post-transition is a time of wrestling. And I think following your example, I think is a really good thing for pastors to take note of, is throw yourself into some Bible study, throw yourself into
yeah,
scriptures that speak to the moment that you're in, this liminal moment. Because if you throw yourself into it, you get a bit of an education, you talk to the right people, it'll shift
good,
you into a place of, okay, Lord, you've got me. Whatever's coming down the track, you've got your hand firmly on me in this.
good.
Otherwise, I think if you end up in a passive, muddling through sort of mode, and I really emphasize that passive area, is that
Yeah,
I find what pastors will do is they'll go back to their old church and meddle. And they may meddle from a distance, or they may start even going back,
yep,
attending
good.
there, and then commenting, criticizing, hearing criticisms and adding to it, and all that sort of junk and carry on that can go on
Yep,
in
yep.
transitions. But if you've got that, what you've done, Carl, I really want to encourage pastors to do exactly what Carl's done. Lean into the scriptures, lean into the stories of people like Joseph, that liminal space, and
Mm,
go, you know what, God's got a future here for me,
mm,
and it'll arrive. I just need to be trusting, praying, just working with the Lord and walking with the Lord through it. Well done, Carl. I think it's an excellent process. Have you had? Can I ask you this, a question without notice? Have you had many temptations to go back and meddle? As you've driven past your old church, have you thought, oh, I've heard a couple of things and I think I could fix that? Have you had any temptations to do that, or have you been
No, I
like,
mean, I
let it
just
go?
know what leadership is like. I know how hard it is. I know how I wouldn't, even if we hear something that's, whatever it is, I know I won't have the full story. So we have done, and we're hearing also excellent things too about
Yeah.
our church. So no, I've just been determined to remain as detached as I can in all of that. Doesn't mean you can't. I mean, we still live in this community. We bump into
Mm.
people, and we encourage them. We have conversations. You can't. We can't be totally separate, but absolutely, we have to give the new leaders the freedom to
Yeah.
be who they are.
Yeah, great advice. And I definitely encourage pastors on this one as well. Don't meddle. If you end
Yeah,
up staying in the church, you just got to clap and applaud everything and just be silent
right.
at the criticisms and
Yeah,
brush them away, push them back. But then again, like Carl has said, you do have to determine not to get involved, because it would
yeah,
be too easy to meddle, I think. But well
yeah.
done for that. Looking back on just your years of leadership, 14 years of senior leadership in the church, what would be a couple of lessons that you would kind of like to pass on to other pastors of being a senior pastor, a lead pastor? Give me two things that you feel you've done to really have a healthy church. And I've worked with your church. I know your church. It's a great church. What would be a couple of things you'd be saying to pastors, especially from this place of now looking back at your church? You're not in the core of the core anymore, but you're looking back. What would be a couple of things that you think, gee, we really did this well as a church to improve the health of our church?
Look, I think culture is really important. People often
Mm,
said about Catalyst, it has a great culture. You can feel it when you walk in the door. And I would say culture is more than just vision casting. It's more than just the positive. I remember Wayne Kadiro from Hawaii, or I think he's Oregon now, but he said he said culture. You've got to guard culture by taking the bad stuff out as much as putting the good stuff
mm,
in.
wow.
And I think you can have a bad day in your skills, maybe, or you can have a bad day preaching, or you can have a bad day in your health, but don't have a bad day on culture is what I would
Mm,
I would say.
wow.
Like, you have to constantly guard culture, and when you see the rotten in it, you don't let that stay there. And I think that's one of the lessons I learned, like, into just not aggressively, but just addressing the little things that you see along the way,
Excellent.
and saying, hey, that's not who we are. And you got to do that as a leader. So I think culture is so important. That what's the old saying? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Every
Mm,
pastor wants to take the hill, but if your culture's not there, your strategy won't be worth it
mm,
at the end of the day. And I think towards the last probably 6 years, really got a better understanding that I was not Jesus, and I can't solve people's problems. And the person that can was Jesus. And that gospel message is not just about salvation, it has incredible impact on every area of our life. So I just more and more had to find ways to help people understand the pure essence of the gospel.
mm,
And to do that, sometimes you've got to be a leader. So that would be the other half. And I know you're a fan of, that great saying, ministry builds people, leaders
mhm.
build churches. I think Ian
Yeah,
Jagelman, give
yeah,
credit where credit's due, but
yeah.
but be a leader and find ways to lead people to the vision that you want, as opposed to just trying to do it all yourself, or exhausting yourself. Probably those two things:
Very
leadership
awesome.
and
I love it.
culture.
Culture and be the leader, be a pastoral leader, not just a pastoral ministry person. I think is
Yep.
crucial. Let's go back. Say if you could have a sit down chat to Carl, 30-year-old Carl. We're going back a few years here, not too many, but just a few. If you could have a chat to 30-year-old Carl, who's is probably just starting to wend his way into pastoral ministry and trying to work it all out and work out marriage and family and fathering and all that. What's one tip you would give to 30-year-old Carl? One piece of advice you'd pass on.
The trouble with this question, it's a great question, but 30-year-olds have to go through the tough stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of how
True.
they learn. But
So true.
But it's a great question, and you can learn faster. I reckon I'd say don't be so serious. Like,
Okay.
it's okay. I think, and this is the sovereignty of God stuff. I think if Jesus died on the cross for us, if he bled, if it is outrageous that he came down from heaven and bled for me and us and humanity. If he did that, I think he's aware when we don't reach our mission target by $5,000, or a staff member leaves. Do you know what I mean? And when
Yep.
you start to see that and see his love, you're less serious about how important you are in making everything happen and
Brilliant.
carrying the burden so intensely. So I probably would shake myself a little bit and go, listen, you are already loved. I mean, this is gospel again. Get your identity in Christ, and then enjoy the journey, And yeah, there's going to be some things that don't come off, and that's okay. So I'd say lighten up. But I reckon my trouble is maybe 60-year-old Carl will say to 50-year-old Carl, maybe you should lighten up. Maybe that will happen too. But I think I've done a bit of a journey,
I think it's great advice for people at every stage of life, but I think especially at the 30-somethings, just
Yeah.
relax a bit. You don't have to get it all done before you're 40. You got decades. I mean,
Yeah.
in 2 days' time, I turned 71, and I'm still motoring along very nicely. Thank you. I'll keep doing this, and I'll reach my peak impact at some time in the next 20 years, but not yet.
Right.
Not yet. Still climbing the mountain. Still having fun.
1 Peter 5, I always forget the actual verse. I think it might be around 6, but, humble yourself under God's mighty hand, and in due time, he will lift you up. Nobody can keep you down. Like sometimes we have this thing of, that awful person in my church did that, elder or whatever. They've thwarted me. You know what? Nobody can thwart you, because you humble yourself, and in due time, he will lift you up. And again, if you can start to relax in that sort of truth, you laugh a lot more.
It's awesome. Okay, we're going to do the rocket round in a minute, but let's finish off with just some. Probably I'm just after some short answers on these ones, but there's a pastor listening who's contemplating transition. He's put in his 20 years and he's really starting to think serious about it. He's talked to their spouse. I won't say his, it could be her. Talk to their spouse, and they're kind of on the same page, ready to go. What tip would you give them as they're kind of starting their journey of knowing transition's coming? What's one tip you'd give that person in that situation?
Wow, one tip. That's hard.
Yeah, I know. It's a nasty consultant's question.
Yeah.
Just one.
I mean, I said a whole bunch of stuff before,
Yeah.
but I think what is jumping into my mind is set aside guilt. Don't let that'll be the big thing. There's a big thing, particularly in charismatic sort of circles, and I know that you've got listeners from across the spectrum, but where you cannot, it's a bit like if you ever leave, something must be really wrong, and that's not fair. One of my journey is on calling and understanding that. I think calling is a very interesting thing, and I don't know that you aren't called if you step outside of a ministry realm. Of course you're called. You're just called to a different thing. So I think just remove the guilt and then open your eyes to make really wise decision, and put lots of prayer and lots of godliness, and really scrub your motives that this is not just about escaping and getting out of something. And because generally if it's just down that end, my thinking is probably not the right time. Okay. I'd say push through that and do it out of a season when it's the right time. That's not all. There's sometimes you've just got to leave, and I get that, but that'd be my one thing. I think I got about 4 things in there.
I know you kept piling them on, but I think I love the guilt one. Just deal with the guilt. What about there's someone listening who's either a month before their transition, or they've just done their transition, and they're kind of like, they're kind of in this liminal space already, even though they haven't quite handed over. Maybe they're feeling that uncertainty. What's one tip you would give them in the liminal space zone?
Yeah, it would be, I would say do things that just restore your soul, whatever those things are. Right. If they're getting on a cruise boat like we did, do that. Just do the fun things in life. And then I would keep pushing into identity, because that's the question that's going to be knocking at your door is, who are you now? And you're very unimportant now. And have you noticed that people don't text you now, or people walk past you in the shopping center and all of that stuff? and remind yourself over and over and over again who you actually are. Yeah.
Yeah. So good. That's great, Carl. I think that's super advice, to be honest with you. All right, let's do the rocket round to finish up. You ready to go?
Cool. Yeah, got it.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee every day of the week.
Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Cycle or walk?
I just did a 96K walk, so I'm definitely going to say cycle.
You did the Kokoda Trail.
I
Crazy,
did.
amazing. Book or podcast?
Podcast all the time. You can do two things at once.
Right?
That's true, right? Who wants to stand there with a book? You can't do something else. It's a podcast.
And everyone's always doing something else when they listen to a podcast. That is so
That's
true.
right.
No one sits and listens to podcasts, I don't think. Wine or beer?
Wine in winter, beer in summer. How about that?
You're having both. You can't.
I can't split that.
Movie or live theatre?
I'm just going to go movie. I like going to the movies.
Okay. Apple or Android?
Oh, Apple. Come on.
Oh, fanboy. Here we go.
There's no debate about that.
Netflix or the cinema?
Netflix.
Okay. Netflix.
Keep it simple.
Netflix. I should change that to Netflix or YouTube. Okay, Netflix or YouTube?
No, still Netflix. But you're convincing me to look into YouTube more.
Oh, man. YouTube. I watch way more YouTube these days than Netflix. Now it's on the telly. Now it's on the smart TVs. YouTube kills Netflix in my mind. Netflix I find overwhelming. YouTube knows what to feed me better than Netflix. Netflix actually need to employ someone from YouTube to find out what to feed you properly. Yeah, their whole design, everything is so much better. Well, Carl, it's been so great having you on here. Now, we've got a couple of people watching, but no questions or no comments from them. So I'm not going to kind of keep dragging this on. Not that we'd be dragging it on, but I don't want to not finish just because people are jumping in. But thanks so much. I really appreciate your vulnerability and sharing really openly on this. And I think so many pastors around the globe are in places of transition and succession generationally. But I think this sitting in the hub is going to help for quite a number of years, pastors who are doing this journey. So thanks so much for joining us and have fun in the next phases of your life.
Yeah, thank you, John. It's an exciting ride. I really mean that for everyone. God is good. As you do this journey, he sees, he knows it'll be fun.
Awesome. Bless you.